Hello. There are actually some really good tutorials online that we will link to places where you can actually learn how to sew an eyelet. What I'm going to do is just talk a little bit about kind of my personal eyelet journey and my favorite tools. And also I'm going to tell you a story. This is the last major step to make these stays wearable. I have the lining now fully in. All the fingers are lined. I have my cute little caterpillar pig gore on the back hip, on the right back hip. Left back hip is less cute. I just grabbed whatever I had. Also, left back hip isn't as dramatic, so it needs much smaller gore. Gores are not one size fits all. Stays are not one size fits all. I always say if everybody had to wear the exact same shoe, nobody would like shoes. Same thing with bras, same thing with stays. So it fits you right, it's going to feel good. Now, this is the kind of stay where there isn't a matching strap, there is a tape strap. And so what I've done is I've got this nice long piece of tape. I measured the last time I wore it or tried it on, and this is where I think the eyelet should be to close in front on the hooks. What I'm gonna do though, here that's actually better, okay. What I'm gonna do though, okay, camera work. Nope, okay, now I'm voguing. All right, okay, yeah, there we go. I'm gonna make one eyelet here and one eyelet a little up and one eyelet a little down so that I have some adjustability, and also just in case I haven't perfected it. I'm also for now leaving the front just tied, and then as these break in and as I'm comfortable with that height, I will whip that down as well, and there'll be a cleaner front than the one with the big knot in the front, because that knot ends up right here. And I'm going to use for this my favorite awl for big eyelets, which is this really deep awl that I bought from a fabric shop in England many years ago. Many awls that are sold for historic sewing are really cool, and they're little bone or false ivory, and they're great for caps and for thin light fabrics. But for a heavy fabric like this very solid tape that I've doubled over, you're going to want something heavier. A lot of people also just use a woodworker's awl. And the fun thing for me when I think about using an awl, because awls are a really important part of traditional sewing in many cultures, including Cherokee, is that we have a story that is pretty well known. It's told a lot as a kind of general children's program story, and actually a really good recent publication of it is here from Cherokee Nation, Stories Told by Cherokees. This is a really cool book because each story, they're very short, and each story is in Cherokee syllabary, Cherokee transliteration, so English letters, and then just in English. And so especially if you're trying to learn Cherokee or you want to get a sense for how the language works, this is a really nice little book. Again, published by the language department in Cherokee Nation. It includes a short version of the story I'm going to tell you. And this is one of those stories that are often told in the winter. It's February right now where I am, which is great because this is a winter story. And it's a story that I think really depicts some of the important characters of Cherokee culture that have come down to this day. And it is called either Bonefinger or Allfinger or Spearfinger, depending on which version you were taught. I was actually originally told it as Allfinger, A-W-L finger, not all fingers, which is what I thought when I was little. So I remember it. And so the story goes generally something like this. I'm not going to properly tell it. I'm just going to give you the bare bones. And I recommend that you seek out a proper storyteller or a good book with it. Really, any book with Cherokee stories should have it. It's one of the really common ones. So a long time ago, before the removal, potentially before contact with the outsiders, there was a cryptid what we call now a cryptid, who roamed in the very oldest, deepest parts of our mountains. If you'll recall, that would be Appalachia, the Appalachian Mountains. And what she would do is she would occasionally get this great hunger. Ordinarily, she could live on whatever everyone else lived on in the area, but occasionally she would get this big hankering, this insatiable lust for the flesh of children. And so she would go hunting children. And the way she did this is she would disguise herself or transform herself from whatever her natural form was, and we actually don't know. Poking a big hole. I want this to be a nice big eyelet. And hold on. So she would transform herself into looking like a sweet little old lady. And she would totter up to little children and get their trust and steal them away. And then I presume eat them. Or I guess we presume eat them. The children would never return. So one day, after she had been attacking a specific village for a while, and too many children had gone missing, which honestly is, any children, the people of this village got together and said, "Gosh, we can't put up with this anymore. We have to do something about this Spearfinger, Bonefinger thing." It wasn't even a person. And so people dug a deep, deep hole and set a trap for her, covered it, classic 1980s cartoon style. They dug basically a pit trap and covered it with, leaves and brush, and then put a decoy child into the middle of the trap. So along comes this cryptid, and she sees this helpless, juicy-looking child. I believe they actually had wrapped up in some versions of this, they had wrapped up a specific kind of animal that made, good baby cry noises. But that varies. And she goes to get this, this helpless, defenseless person, and she, as she starts to approach the trap, one of the young men waiting to, end her life, looks at her and sees his grandmother. He believes she's his grandmother, and he starts to cry out to save her, and his friends stop him. "Oh no, she's tricking you. It's not real." So then she falls in the trap, and then various ways of explaining the ensuing battle end with her demise. And I always thought this was really interesting because I just sort of assumed that most stories about a single cryptid would end that way. Here's how we got rid of this threat. Because most Cherokee stories about such threats end, here's how we got rid of this threat. But as I've worked with other tribes and talked to other people throughout my life, to my great surprise, a lot of their stories about even a singular, magic dog or bird or something like that, where it's one thing, the story is just, I would ask them, well, how did you kill it? How did you end its life? And they would say, "Oh, it's still there. We just don't go there." Which, at least from the, and maybe we did have stories like that too, that we don't tell or that we're more secretive about. But at least all of the Cherokee stories I know that are about some singular threat, the story, the triumphant ending is how we, got rid of this threat. And, it's tempting to say that says something about my culture, aside from the fact that maybe the stories that survived to present day might have emphasized when we had a threat and either survived or overcame it. I mean, don't blame us for that, I guess. But then also, I just always thought the Spearfinger story was really interesting because I just never questioned the fact that you have this kind of threat and therefore you deal with it. And I remember thinking the first time someone told me this story, well, why hadn't, how had this been allowed to go on, or how long did it go on? And of course, the story doesn't tell you that. But one of the interesting things about, like I said, one of the alternative names for Spearfinger is actually Allfinger. Allfinger. And so every time I use my really big sticky awl, I think about that story, and I think about how cultures overcome threats. So that is my version of that story. Very short. You can find better, more elaborate versions. A lot of times people will, this is a story we use to entertain children, which might say something about us as well. But you can elaborate it, make it longer, make it more like a Shaggy Dog situation, because why not? So you can have more people guessing about, like, what did they use? You can give more embellishment on the battle with this creature. You can ask the children how to come up with the names of the people who might have helped. And it's a fun way to emphasize that what we do is we protect ourselves and take care of our communities. So now I have 1, 2, this is my third one. And one important thing that I learned early on, my first pair of stays, I didn't know better. I thought heavier thread was going to be better. I thought I need the heaviest linen thread I can get, and then that will make my eyelets very, very strong. And I need to really pack in the thread. I've timed it. I think I spent 20 minutes sewing each eyelet, just, which, now I know better is excessive, right? So you only need about a dozen stitches, even for a pretty big eyelet, because all the stitches are doing is holding the eyelet open. You're not breaking any threads. You're not doing anything. You're just holding open the space you've made in the fabric with your awl. And you do have to go back in occasionally while you're sewing and keep widening that aperture, because it will start to close on you. And so the first time I started making eyelets, it was for my first pair of stays. I didn't know better. I didn't know to keep reinserting the awl. I didn't know to use a slightly thinner thread. I just really packed it in there. And to this day, that pair of stays is very hard to lace, because those eyelets are just packed tight. They're just tight. And the way I used to describe it to my friends is, if you're not careful, your eyelets will look like little cat buttholes. So there's your very dignified explanation of my first eyelets. My new ones that I do now, much more functional, much easier, way less time. So just in time to tell you guys the story, which was about less than 10 minutes. I finished all 3 of these eyelets. I would have done it faster if I wasn't trying to talk. But eyelets really shouldn't take you that long once you get comfortable. It's not a difficult stitch. It isn't hard to do. And you just need to make them big enough to be useful for whatever you're doing with them. So these eyelets will end up being what holds this piece of tape to a hook that's on the front of these stays here. And when I do my dressing video for these stays, you will see exactly how that works, because it's a really fun thing to do. We're actually not 1,000% sure that is what people did, at least not always, but it's a really convenient way to maintain a lot of range of motion in your stays, because your shoulders can be easily released. So if you're doing a lot of hard work and you need to reach your arms forward, and you strip down to your shift stays and petticoat because you're doing a lot of hard work, maybe in the kitchen, or you're mucking stalls or something, you can unhook the straps and you get a little bit less support on your figure because the straps are loose, but you can have more range of motion in reaching forward or reaching back. And that's also one of the reasons why you'd want a series of eyelets, even if nothing else changes about your body, because sometimes you're doing activities where you want a little more support and a little more reminder to hold your shoulders back, and sometimes you are doing activities where you need more range of motion. In fact, in some of the early 19th century manuals about stays and corsets, they talk about using early elastics right here on your stays in order to make it easier to dress your own hair. So when you think about when you're doing your hair, you tend to have your arms up and kind of pulled up away from your body. And if you're sitting there already all dressed in your gown, etc., you can be a little more stiff and proper. So, outro. Okay. If this is your first time, you're very welcome. If you've been here before, thank you so much for continuing to join us on this journey. And I hope that you have a good week, and like and subscribe.